Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you are here to talk about books. Specifically today, we are here to do my January wrap up. Now, I have something that I'm going to start doing. I don't like star reviews. I don't like them. I don't like saying a book is a 3-star, but I still recommend it. I don't like doing that. So I have come up with a system. My Discord has helped me out with this. Books for me are now either going to be highly recommend, not my style, or do not recommend. And I know that those are vastly different things. I know that seems like it might not be helpful, but I do think that it will actually be helpful because when I start talking about a book, I don't want you guys to hear me say negative things and then be like it was not my style or anything like that. And then, or DNF and it was just horrible. I don't like putting that out there. But if I had issues with a book but would still recommend it, I want you guys to know that as well. So that's what we're going with for now. We might modify it later, but this is how I'm progressing through the year. Highly recommend, not my style, do not recommend. Okay, so for the month of January, I read 10 books, DNF'd 2. One of them I'm actually still kind of working on, so it's more like 7 and 9. Forgot that one of them was one I was still working on. I read 4,916 pages. Now, this is going to be a little skewed from my normal stats because I actually am participating in SPSFC 2. So some of the things are going to lean a little sci-fi. 63.6% of my reading was series, 36.4% was standalone. I have started 5 series this year already. 1 sequel read, 1 series finished, and 1 series I am DNFing. So this is where I say it's going to be a little skewed from the norm. But I read 1 historical fiction, 5 fantasy, and 5 sci-fi. Well, actually, it's going to be 4 fantasy because the one I haven't finished is fantasy. So I'm leaning a little sci-fi, but like I said, SPSFC2 is what I am participating in currently, so it's going to lean a little sci-fi. Another thing that is really skewed for me currently is 18.2% women authors, 18.2% multiple authors, and 63.6% male authors. So yeah, another thing that is going to be skewed by SPSFC. And then 45.5% have been read from before, and 54.5% are new author. Again, skewed from SPSFC. But I did want to go ahead and give you my stats per usual. It's just going to be a little off. Now, I am going to do my wrap up with my SPSFC books in it. This is because I intended to do reviews of the books that I was reading. However, through our slush pile, we had a total of 1 book that was actually my style. I did go ahead and read them anyways, even though they weren't my style. And I reviewed them according to what I thought other people would think of them, not my personal taste, because I can see where these books have merit. And even though it's not what I like, I tried to judge it based on what was actually there, like character work, writing, plot, stuff like that. I tried to judge it based on the actual mechanics of writing instead of my personal enjoyment. Okay, so the first book that I read in January would be Priest of Bones by Peter McLean. I have had this on my TBR for so long and have really been excited to get to it. Now, if you guys want to know what the vibes of this book is, Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders is the thing I can equate to most, like fantasy Peaky Blinders. But this is about Thomas Piety and his brother and his band o' brothers. Kind of coming back from war, realizing all of the things that they had established before they left has been torn down and taken over. And now they are going to have to reestablish themselves in this world. And all the things that they had in place, like all of the businesses that they were running, all of the things that they have done for their city that they had, even though that they're not great people, they had helped, all of that stuff that they had put in place before they left. that they're going to have to reestablish it. They're going to have to put their foot down and say, we own this place, not you. So I really enjoyed this. I'm not the biggest fan of like gangland type stuff. I don't really like, this is why I haven't read Jade Legacy. I'm missing one of them, and it's the first one, I think. But the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. I'm not the biggest fan of that. However, I do think that I will continue with this because I really enjoyed the narrative voice in this story. And like I said, Peaky Blinders vibes. That's really what this gives me, and I'm excited to continue. And I don't know if I will buy the books. I do own the first one, obviously, but I might just do these via audio. Like I said, I love the narrative voice and I love the narrator. So yeah, I would highly recommend this one. Next would be Intergalactic Bastard, and this would be one of my SPSFC reads. And while I enjoyed the majority of this book, it is very centered on a gladiator in space, and that's not my thing. It's not my thing. I really liked the way that this story progressed, though. The plot was fast moving. It was enjoyable. There were a couple of characters that were okay, but the main character himself was enjoyable to read from, even though he's kind of a douche. But I mean, the book is called Intergalactic Bastard, so you kind of get an idea that that's where we're going. And I didn't like the way that he treated his girlfriend, like, but you know, again, name of the book, you kind of got to roll with it, right? I would recommend this one. If a gladiator in space is something that sounds like something you would like, then definitely pick this one up, because I did think the writing was pretty good. Next we come to our DNF of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. Now, I really hate to say anything mean about this book because it was really, really well written, but I'm not a fan of derivative stories. I really do not like books that read like other books. Now, I like retellings just fine, but I like the retellings that do something different with the story. I like the retellings that are from a different perspective than the main character of the story that we know. Like, I really love Maleficent. So it's a retelling of a story we know and love, but it's Maleficent's point of view. So when you write a book that is completely derivative of something else, it irks me. Now, I got so mad. So if you guys are part of my Patreon, you will have seen my full rant. So I'm not going to go into the full rant here. The writing in Of Blood and Fire is so dang good. So dang good. And I think that ticked me off more, that the writing was so good, but the story was so derivative. I couldn't stand it. I absolutely couldn't stand it. Like I said, I go full on in my Patreon of this book. So if you want that, then you can join my Patreon, and I won't go into it here. But yeah. However, if you like those kinds of stories, if you like those books that read like Lord of the Rings or Aragon, like just retold, I'd recommend this book. I don't think it's bad at all. I just couldn't stand that the writing was so dang good and the story was so derivative. Couldn't take it. Next, I read my historical fiction. Yay, adding some historical fiction into the mix. Mistress of Rome by Kate Quinn. This is also featured in my Patreon because I DNF'd Of Blood and Fire. So I won't go into a whole lot of detail with this one either. This covers the depravity of Rome to a T. So if you are not prepared to delve into the depravity of Rome, don't read this book. I enjoyed it though. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it if that's something that you are into, but the writing is good. This is not what I expected from Kate Quinn. It is the writing I expected from Kate Quinn though, and the character work I expected from Kate Quinn. So while I can't highly recommend this book because of a lot of the things that go on in this book, still, I'd recommend it. I would recommend it if that is something that you're into. Next would be a series that I love so much, so much, and this broke me. This broke me. I was complaining at T.A. Bruno because he made me cry. And he was like, how do you think I felt writing it? I totally get it. This book got me straight in the feels. At the Threshold of the Universe by T.A. Bruno. Highly, 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 highly recommend this series. Please pick it up. Please pick it up. This is the conclusion to the Song of Chimera, and oh my gosh, I can't even talk about this book very much because so much has happened to get us to this point that anything I talked about would be incredibly spoilery. But I do like that we have moved on from the parents to focus on the kids, but now they're all together and really trying to work together, fight together to save this world that they've found and have been a part of for so long. And uh everything that happens to the Cassis family in this book, I just, I can't. But yes, T.A. Bruno, he is a force to be reckoned with. He is an author to keep your eye on. I, I loved this so much. I loved it. Highly recommend it, like I said. And yeah, like one to watch, guys. One to watch because In the Orbit of Sirens is still my favorite, even though this book broke me. I just really loved the introduction to this world. I really loved exploring the world in the first book. And while grand things are happening in this book, it does lose some of the whimsical value that the first book had that made me fall in love with it. But yes, I mean, this book is amazing. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Next, I read Viral for SPSFC2, and unfortunately, I was one of the people that DNF'd it. And I DNF'd it because there is a book that I don't like, and it's called Feed by Mara Grant. I can't stand the setup of the book, and when I got into it, I was getting flashbacks to that book, but then the writing started to fall off. There was a lot of typos and errors throughout the story. There was a lot of repetition, and then things got gross. So I think the gross factor wouldn't have bothered me if all of those other aspects were dealt with, but they weren't. And unfortunately, that caused me to DNF Viral, and I would not recommend Viral. Next was another SPSFC to read, and that would be God in the Machine by Cole Martin. Now, this one I recommend. If you guys like Star Wars type stories, I think that you guys would really, really enjoy this one. And I liked a lot of the setup. There were a couple of reviewers, though, who caught on that this story is kind of derivative. So go in knowing that while it does pull from a lot of things, there's going to be some things that are going to be familiar and maybe a little too familiar for some, but I would still recommend this one. I really enjoyed it. And of the books that we had, this is probably the one I enjoyed the most. Next would be the other SPSFC to read that I tackled this month, and that would be Titan Hoppers by Rob J. Hayes. Again, a book I would recommend. Now, my issue with Titan Hoppers, I have found I don't like progressive fantasy, not at all. I don't like the way it's written. I don't like how repetitive it is. Whew, I don't like it. It is not for me. I would still recommend this though if you like Cradle or Lightblade or anything like that. Like if those are the things that you enjoy, pick up Titan Hoppers because it's pretty good. Now, we also had a bit of an issue, and I say we, the Wayward Stars. We all had a little bit of an issue of this reading a little young, and it did ding it on points whenever we went into actually give our points for the book, that it read YA when it's not supposed to be. But I really liked the concept of the Titan Hoppers. I really liked the way the worlds that we were introduced to were explored. I thought that was really cool, the way the magic was explored. And it's a fun time. It's a fun time. Definitely not as dark as the other stuff I have read by Rob J. Hayes. Kind of has, like I said, another, like a younger feel to it. But I'd recommend it. And lastly, guys, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I have another epic fantasy that I absolutely love. If you guys have followed me for a while, you will know epic fantasy, not my thing. I have Brian Lee Durfee's back here. I have Empire of the Vampire, but there are very few epic fantasies that I really enjoy. I mean, The Martyr's right there too, so, but you know. But one that kind of has a Lord of the Rings vibe, What is Happening? Highly recommend The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. Oh my goodness. I loved this so much from start to finish. The pacing of this book is fantastic. The story in this book is fantastic. Does it read like Lord of the Rings? It has a Lord of the Rings vibe, but nothing is derivative in this story. I mean, there were some things that you could go, there's a nod to Lord of the Rings right there. I see it. I see that. But I was blown away, enraptured. The writing is so good. The characters are so good. Oh my gosh, Grubb. I absolutely love Grubb. I mean, he is so funny, and I laughed out loud multiple times with some of his scenes, and the way he thinks, it just cracks me up. But I loved the characters. Oh my gosh, do not get invested too much in these characters though, because Chris Whitting will kill them. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, he holds nothing back in killing off his characters. And I was just like, oh, we did that. We went there. But this was so dang good. So dang good. And I had a hard time putting it down. I was reading this while I was reading my SPS FC books, and I was like, but I want to read this. And so it did take me like 2 weeks to get through it, but that was because I was reading other things alongside of this. But yes, highly, highly recommend this. I've actually already pre-ordered the next book. And for the one I am currently reading, I have short stories going on, like a short story collection, A Universe of Wishes. There are multiple authors for this. I'm kind of just reading the stories as I go, not really investing too much time into it, but there are a couple of stories that I have read. A Universe of Wishes being the first story in this bind up of short stories. I actually really enjoyed that one. There is one that is Gemma Doyle. I have not read that series in a long time, so when I went to pick that up, I was lost, so lost, by Libba Bray. But I am like going through that slowly. And then I have started Temple of No God by H.M. Long, and I'm only about 50 pages into it. I'm enjoying it just as much as I did Hall of Smoke, but I haven't got that far yet. All right, that is it for me today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.